Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. It is episode 70. So super excited. We're just going strong with this podcast, mainly because the amazing guest, right? So week after week, amazing guest, expert guest that can share some valuable advice, providing actionable advice for your career and life. But before we get into that, make sure when you tune in, say hello to my guest and myself. Let us know where you're tuning in from. In this way, we can answer any questions you may have because this is going to be a phenomenal topic. But just to kick things off, this podcast episode is sponsored by the Career Accelerator Planner. It is a planner designed for you, the corporate professional, for you to track your wins, your progress, your projects, and your value in one place. So if you're looking for something where you can transition careers and you need to know, what you've done in that last position, you have all the wins that you can pitch into an elevator pitch. This is the planner for you. If you're looking for something where you can track all the projects that you've done for crucial conversations around merit increase, salary, bonuses, anything like that, you have it all here in one place. So just head on over to the careeracceleratorplanner.com and grab yourself a copy. So tonight, we are talking about, are you a good leader? What are the character traits? We got leadership titles thrown on all over the place, but we're going to learn tonight if you are a good leader. So I have none other than Chelsea J. She's a career and leadership coach, a LinkedIn learning instructor, and she is the founder of Chelsea J Consulting. So let me welcome this young lady here. Chelsea J, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Orlando. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you tonight.
Absolutely. I always say this to every guest. Thank you for saying yes. And I'm seeing more guests saying yes quicker. So I'm like, oh, wow, this is making my job easier to find phenomenal people in the network. So I'm super excited to hear because this is a great topic I think folks need to hear about. But share with us more about who Chelsea is, your business, and your background.
Of course. Wow. Well, I have a bit of a winding background, so I'll try to keep it short. But I originally started off as a career coach and later moved into the leadership development area. And I'll kind of give you a history about how I started out. So, in the corporate world, I actually landed a lot of leadership roles at a younger age. So, I went through a lot of learning and growing, trial and error, even myself working in toxic work environments and for bosses who were not so great. So that also taught me a lot too. And as I started coaching individuals, I realized that leadership was their primary reason for needing coaching and wanting to move on to a different environment. So I started coaching up and coming change makers and having them land leadership roles. And then I also started training other organizations and helping their employees, build better leadership programs. So it's something that I have a personal connection to, a personal love, and so much so that I recently partnered with LinkedIn and I came out with a LinkedIn learning course, and it's the skills for the first 90 days as a new manager. So it really gives those foundational
Mhm.
skills for all of the traits that you need to really impact people in a positive way.
Oh, that's good. We're definitely going to dive into that. Before we do, just say hello to Dan. Dan, my man, what's going on, sir? Erica Shaw, thank you so much for joining. Folks, I see a couple of more folks in there, but feel free to type in where you're coming in from or if you have questions around the topic, right? Character traits for a good leader. So let's start there. Let's start with the LinkedIn learning thing. So congratulations
Thank you.
on that. So and that's centered around, you said, the first 90 days. So for new leaders,
Yes.
we're talking new leaders, I would assume.
Absolutely, new
Okay.
leaders. Because one thing that I personally noticed in my own career was that a lot of new managers would just get thrown into the role without a lot of support. They didn't even really have a mentor to guide them. And whenever I train and coach a lot of professionals, they're like, I really don't know what to do. I'm just trying to figure it out. And the first 90 days is where you make the biggest impact. First of all, as an employee and as a manager, because those employees are watching you and trying to figure out what type of person that you're going to be. So you really need to set the stage for the type of leader that you're going to be. So that's what the course highlights.
I think that's so crucial because if I think back 15 years or so when I stepped into a leadership role, right, there was no manual, right? There was no, or at least not that I was aware of, but there was no manual on one what to do, what questions to ask. How are you coaching your clients that possibly that are new leaders in that first 90 days? What are some of the nuggets you're walking them through to get prepared?
Well, first of all, one of the biggest things that I constantly preach as a trait and something that you have to get comfortable with is self awareness.
Mm,
I want to make sure that you are a self aware individual. And that means that you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know the areas that need a lot of improvement, you know if there's any biases you have, because that's really important to have as a leader because you should be continuously working on yourself because number one, you're going to be modeling behavior that your team will be following, and you're going to be passing down things that you don't sometimes mean to pass down. And you need to be aware of what you're doing because it's truly impacting the people that you are working with. So, the first thing that we talk about is self awareness. And I want to know what your biggest questions are or what areas that you think you need help in because then we can start building from there.
love that, love that. Hey Joe, appreciate you joining again, sir, and your consistent support. Erica says yes, employers often coaching leaders on how to do the job but not how to lead. That is so true. There's a book out there, and another guest I had on several, maybe 2 years ago, that talks about that too. One of the main things is you understand the function, but there's the people aspect to it, right?
Mhm.
You're a people leader. You don't get training as an individual contributor, whether you have a manager title or not. But where's the training around how to deal with people, personalities? Talk to us about some of those soft skills that leaders need to be aware of, whether new or tenured leaders that we may have lost our way and not getting caught up in the daily minutia.
Yes, and there's so many skills that you need as a leader because you're really catering to a wide variety of audiences. But the number one thing I always say is you need to know how to communicate and not just communicate with the jargon and technical speak that you go to with your manager, but you need to know how to communicate with your team. And your team is going to be very diverse. You're going to have men, you're going to have women, you're going to have people with different backgrounds who have come from different experiences. And you need to know how to speak to that, which also leads into knowing how to motivate people too.
Mm,
So, one of the things in my course is really building those individual relationships with your staff because you get to know them and you get to know what motivates them, what triggers them, what excites them, what they're good at. You need to know how to communicate to build those relationships. So, that's one of the number one traits that
great,
I start working on too.
great segue because I must take a step back.
Okay.
For the new leaders, what are some questions they should be asking themselves in the first 90 days, or maybe their team or manager or peers? What does that make up? How would you educate them on that? Saying, hey, you should go on with this kind of game plan, and these are the questions you should be asking.
Yes. So one of the questions that I actually ask the people that I coach is, hey, why did you become a manager? What made you want to get into this role and what's your motivation behind it? Because often when you're building those relationships with your employees, they want to know that background. What led you here? Did you just get a promotion because you knew somebody, or were you very intentional about leading people because you wanted to make a difference? And I also tell professionals that they need to ask themselves, what type of legacy do you want to lead or leave? And what do you want to be known for? What is
Mm.
the one word that you want your employees to use to describe you? And that right there will change the game with how you lead, how you communicate, and how you solve problems. So that's what you should be asking yourself.
I like that. I like that. What are some of the don'ts in the first 90 days that new leaders should be doing, and then I want to pivot to more experienced leaders. So for
Okay.
the yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. So, some of the don'ts is whenever you first step into a leadership role, you have all of these metrics,
Hmm.
that you have to become familiar with and all the goals that are coming from the corporate side. Don't get so caught up in that, because I've seen leaders go into the role and they're like, okay, we need to meet these quarterly goals, these annual goals, and they just start dishing out, okay, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And they don't have a desire to get to know the people who are working for them. It's more of almost like a dictatorship. They're like, just do this, do this, do this, make me look good. Don't go in so focused on the metrics. Focus on some of the goals, but also focus on your people, because your people are the ones who are going to be getting the work done. And when
Right.
people are happy with you, they're going to want to do their best work and they'll help you reach those goals.
I know some of the things I used to do or do. Um, I go in to understand what motivates them, and you mentioned that. Um, what's their preference on how they like to be managed? Right? Do they need strong accountability? Do they just need little direction? Heavy direction. And then what personal stories can I share of myself for us to start to connect? So there's that camaraderie as well as just, hey, I can come and talk to you. I call it like a big brother type of management style to say, hey, we can talk about anything, and I'm gonna always give you the why of a decision from corporate, or why this needs to get done, why this is not being done, because I want the team to be fully aware. So almost really over communicate that in the instance of my absence, they can speak to the business and understand what's going on in that department as well. And it's not always, oh, let me check with Orlando. Let me check with Orlando. Like, nope, we just had a meeting and I know XYZ. This is why this is happening. Do you
I love
see
that.
do you see that being a good tool, which you just just said, but is that
Yeah,
something you think is
yes.
efficient?
Oh, absolutely. And it builds trust as well, because a lot of leaders go in thinking that they need to keep all of the information to themselves. And whenever they do that, their employees automatically think, oh, wow, they're hiding something, or I'm in the dark. So I love that you mentioned that, because you want your employees to feel informed and empowered with the information that they need to either
Hmm.
report to others or get the work done. So, yes, I absolutely love that.
Love it. So let's shift to some more seasoned leaders who may have been in it 3 years, 5 years, what have you. What are some things you would coach them, because they probably got a rhythm right now and may have forgot some of the things before they started becoming a manager. They're like, wow. And again, it could be that people
Yes.
element. What ways can we kind of revitalize that manager, him or her?
Absolutely. One of the things that I ask seasoned leaders is, when's the last time you got feedback from your employees and what did they
Mm,
say to you?
mm.
And oftentimes they're like, feedback? What kind of feedback? General feedback. You're giving them a performance evaluation every year. What do they have to say about your performance?
Right.
And as a leader, you really want to foster that open communication and create safe spaces so that your staff can tell you if you hurt their feelings, or if you didn't communicate appropriately, or if you did something that just didn't sit right with them, or if they would like to try out a new management style. If you started off, kind of micromanaging them, kind of checking in on them all the time, and they've grown out of that or needing that,
Hmm.
they should be comfortable with telling you, hey, can we try a more hands off approach? I'm a little bit more comfortable with my role now, and I know how to get my work done. You should be having, those safe conversations and those open conversations and getting that feedback so that you can continue to improve, because you're not perfect and your way
Hmm.
always isn't the best way.
I love that because I did that too. Um, I had some, folks that work for me that were just no problem. Hey, we need you to do this, to do that. I'm like, hey, I'm here to serve you, so no problem. But always, I love that because I would set the tone to keep me accountable. Right? If I'm not doing this part, you're drowning in something, just tap me and say, hey, I need you to jump in this project or whatever it is, to keep the ball rolling. So I love that. When it comes to the human piece there, and again, not so much strategic of a manager. How much should we be engaged in our employees, to really bond that relationship, meaning personally?
Yes. So you have to remember these people are people that you work with every
Hmm.
single day. So you're going to, need to get to know them on a personal level. And I always say, get to know someone with as much information as they want to share.
Mm.
And I always say, hey, give me three facts about one of your employees. You should be able to tell me three things, right, about them. If it's their hobbies, what type of food they like to eat, what their favorite show is. And that's, kind of basic stuff that doesn't feel like it's digging too deep, but it's still building that relationship. And if you
Hmm.
can't tell me three facts about some of your employees, that goes to show that you need to be building those relationships a little bit more.
Got it. And when we talk about building trust, and free folks are chiming in on that, Erica and Joel, um, what are some ways as a leader that we can continue to build that team trust outside or inside the office that kind of breaks us away from the day-to-day functions, to be like, hey, let's just,
Mhm.
whether it's just let's just go grab lunch and eat, or something a little more, to where we're building a stronger bond.
Yeah, so a lot of this actually has to do with your personal character traits, right?
Mm,
So, one of the things that I always say is if you want to build trust, you need to be dependable. And that means showing up when you say that you're going to show up, right? And you also need to be trustworthy. I have come across a lot of managers, even in my career, that told me information, about another employee that they shouldn't have been telling me. So be trustworthy, because if your employee is disclosing information to you,
hmm.
keep that in confidence, right? And also go to bat for your team, because that also builds trust as well. When you advocate on behalf of your team and you're willing to stick up for them when they need it most, that will build trust as well.
Does it make it tough? Because you make a good point. Does it make it tough to turn around and then have those tough conversations, maybe around performance or whatever, um, when that personal, you're trying to build that personal communication and team bonding, almost
Mhm,
blurs. So we're like, oh, he's my buddy, she's my buddy. They're,
mhm,
if I do something wrong, they got my back. Nothing's wrong. They're not
mhm.
gonna, put me on a pip or anything like that. Does it get tougher when you get too close to your employees, your team members? I'll say.
It can get tough, but that's where you need to draw the line and remember
Hmm.
that you are a manager, right? So we may go out to lunch at work and we may talk about a few personal things here or there, but we're not hanging out on the weekends. We're not hanging out after hours, and we're not disclosing so much that it could be potentially an issue. And there also comes a point where you also need to have respect for each other as well. I respect your position. You should respect mine. I do want to know you on a semi personal level so that we can work best together. But you also need to make sure that you're showing respect on both sides.
Got it. Got it. And so Erica shares, when bosses are vulnerable and open about themselves, employees are more likely to do the same. Correct. Let me jump back to what Joe said too. He said, yes, information is powerful and transparency and builds trust. So appreciate that.
Yes.
Um, where are we still seeing gaps, or are you seeing gaps in leadership today? And has the pandemic shifted that space to where we need to kind of go back to basics?
So, the biggest gap in leadership that I see is organizations not offering, how do I want to say this? Not offering opportunities that pay more, offer more flexibility, and, give a little bit more responsibility without bumping them up to a manager role,
Mm,
right? I don't think that you should have to, a manager role shouldn't equate to more money, especially if you're not management material. And I think a lot of companies don't do a good job with vetting managers as well, because not everyone is meant to be a manager. And that's okay. You may be really good at your job, but you might just need a raise, or you might need a title change that doesn't involve people management. And I think that more companies need to kind of foster that and recognize that and offer more opportunities outside of management, and kind of leave that to people who are like, no, I care about people. I like advocating. I'm really good at conflict management. I like people, which is a
hmm.
big
Hmm.
thing. I think that companies need to leave those roles to people who truly want to be a leader.
I like that. So, because what I've seen, and I think that happens more so, and I could be completely wrong, but here's the analogy. I'll take a step back. Here's the analogy. If you're a top sales performer, you get promoted, you think that that person can train other sales reps to do the same. And one of the key is, can you duplicate yourself? If that person is truly an individual contributor, like you said, and they get promoted,
Mhm.
they're like, I don't want to do all this other stuff. I just want to do my job. They're like, well, you got people, you got process, you got paperwork, you got this, you got all these things you
Mhm.
need to handle. And it's like, this is not what I signed up for. So leaders need to understand. It sounds like what you're saying, and you can add to this for sure, Chelsea. Leaders need to understand how to recognize and develop other leaders before they become leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if someone is telling you, I want to be a leader because I'm really good at people management and I want to build a better culture in this organization, you
Hmm.
need to pay attention to that. Because another thing that companies fall into the trap of doing is promoting people to leadership based on longevity. And I
Mm.
always say that the amount of time that you stay at a company should not equate to a promotion to a management role.
Right. You know where I see in this area, the call center space is where I see a lot of error when again someone's a top producer, and they get promoted and have zero leadership skills or people skills. And
Mhm.
then they're tasked with driving, now a team they just got elevated from. And then there's this mix of really just it just goes bad. It just goes bad.
Mhm.
Um, are you seeing that at higher levels too, or folks that you've coached and they're like, oh, let me ask this: has anyone come to you and say, "I got promoted too fast"? Like, yeah, I think I got promoted too fast.
Yes, absolutely. And I've also coached people in different organizations that I've worked at that got promoted way too fast just because they had been there or, they were producing the numbers that they needed to produce. And it's truly unfortunate because it frustrates the person who got the promotion and then it frustrates the people under them who are being managed by them. And that usually ends up leading to a higher turnover which doesn't work out for the company long term. So, unfortunately, I've seen that. I've worked in a lot of different industries. I've worked in the nonprofit world, the government, banking, a little bit of everywhere, and I've seen it a little bit too much.
I would assume in government or in banking, it's a lot of that possibly.
It is a lot of that, and you will hear people say it proudly. Oh, I've been here, for 15 years, so my time was coming. And I'm like, well, did you want to be a manager? Not really, but I wanted more money. And that's where the problem is. There needs to be a change with the positions and pay levels there too.
So, what are those conversations like with folks that got promoted too fast? Like, give us a rough on how you would coach someone through that. Like, one of the questions you did ask: did you want to be a manager? Like, what are some
Mhm.
second, third, fourth questions that you're asking these folks?
Yes. So, one thing about me with my clients, I always tell them up front, I'm very blunt and transparent,
Mm,
and I'm not going to tiptoe around any issue. So, I need you to be transparent and open with me too. So, number one, did you want to be a manager? Number two, how did you get here? Right? Because I like to trace the steps back to how you even accepted this management role. Were you forced into it? Was it something that was just handed to you? Did you feel pressure or did you feel like a lot of people feel this way? Oh, I'm at a certain point in my life, whether it be mid 40s or pushing 40, and they're like, "Oh, I need something to show for my age or how long I've been
mm.
working, so I need to have a management role." So then that's more of a mindset issue. And I'm always like, who are you trying to please? Who did you take this role for? Why did you take it? What would you like to be doing? How much money do you want to be making? Can you do it outside of this role? So, I mean, we go down a list of questions so that I can get that feedback so we can start to put together a better plan for them to move forward where they can get the people management out the way and get back to doing what they truly love.
Is talk to us because we're talking about key, basically key traits, some good traits
Mhm.
that identify good leaders. I think you mentioned self awareness earlier.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that more. as a leader stepping in or more tenured
Mhm.
leader, each either point you can take on
Mhm.
how strong of a self-awareness you should have when because now you're going to be leading people.
Yes. I always say everyone needs a high level of self awareness, especially managers. And I often encourage managers to either have a career coach or have a therapist, one or the other, because you need to have an outlet where you can talk about the things that you go through, your thoughts, your feelings, and get that honest feedback. So, number
Hmm.
one, you definitely need to be self aware in a leadership role because the more self aware you are, if you know that you're not management material and you're self-aware, you wouldn't accept the job, right? So if someone came to you and said, "Hey, you're a top producer, you've been here for 15 years, we're going to promote you to management." A self-aware person will say, "Hey, I will not thrive in that role. I know myself. I do not want to manage people. I like doing what I'm doing. So let's talk about a promotion with maybe a title change and a boost in pay where I'm not managing people."
Hmm.
And often employers aren't used to that transparency. But when you tell people your truth and what you want, they will often work with you, especially if you are a top producer and they need you anyway. So the more self aware you are, you can actually advocate for yourself and make better decisions.
What makes a great leader? Like there's that book, From Good to Great.
Mhm,
What makes a
mhm.
great leader? You can share someone
Yeah.
that you've worked for in the past, but what are those key traits you noticed?
Oh, I would say that a lot of the leaders that I've worked for have been selfless. The ones
Mm,
that I really enjoyed working for. Because once you are a manager, you have to quickly realize that it's no longer about you. It's about your team and it's about your results. You are actually now a middleman.
mm,
And a lot of people forget that when they go into executive leadership roles. They think, oh, I'm going to shine and everybody's going to see me and notice me. And that's not the case. You are a middleman and you need to be okay with that. You're going to be managing projects and you're going to be managing people and you're going to be funneling information both ways. And you need to be okay with not always being the person to shine because your goal as a leader should be to develop those under you as well. And that takes time, it takes mentoring, it takes coaching, and you need to be okay with doing that. And someone might outshine you, and you need to be fine with that. So I'd say
yeah,
definitely selflessness.
I love that. And I heard someone say too years ago, middle management is kind of the worst position to have in corporate America because you have
Yes.
people that you have to serve your team and then who you have to report to. So you're pulled in two different directions all the time. So it's tough. It looks
Mhm.
glorified when you got manager or whatever senior manager next to your
Yes,
title, but it is not always fun. Um,
absolutely.
share with us some of the you started to talk about the pockets and stuff that we're missing earlier with that in your program. And what's the name of your program, or is it that you have that you coach folks in?
Yes. So it's the transformed leader. And that is what I've been doing for the past year. And we go through 12 weeks of coaching. We go through a lot of that self discovery so we can determine if you are management material. And if you're not,
Mm,
that's fine. We can go in a different direction. But I always want to make sure that I'm setting my people up for success. I don't want to give you that false sense of, hey, you're going to be amazing. But if you don't have courage or integrity, it's okay. You're still going to be great. So we really take those first few weeks to dive into what type of leader you're going to be if you are management material. And then we kind of go from there because leadership looks different in different industries and different
hmm.
companies. So we also kind of dive in and talk about that as well.
So that's interesting. So share without going into all the secret sauce.
Mhm, mhm,
At the end of a coaching session, you can identify someone and they have the realization or self-awareness like, hey, I'm not ready for this. What
mhm,
would those traits what comes out of that to say, okay, you don't want to do this, or you don't necessarily choose to have that, you're not looking to learn this?
mhm.
What are those key traits to say, you sure it's not a good fit?
Yeah, so I can figure out whether or not you're going to be a great manager just when I ask about your motivators. What is
Mm,
motivating you to be a manager? And if you tell me, you want the status, the prestige, you want the extra money, you want the additional perks. That is not management material. You
Hmm.
just want to work for a company that provides all of those things for you so that you can be happy and live your life the way you want to. So that's one of the ways that I can tell. And I ask a couple other few key questions. Um, and sometimes people have to say, hey, let me actually think about it for a week. And then,
Hmm.
during our next session, I will answer that for you. And that's always okay too, because when we get asked those tough questions, sometimes it takes a while to think about. And that's
Yeah.
where I said self awareness is key, because you also have to do self reflection too and really think, is this the right move for me?
So are you seeing more folks say yes to or answer yes, I want to be a manager because of the monetary gain and the status?
I have seen
Wow.
that a lot. Which is why there are so many professionals who have worked in toxic work environments. That's really where that comes from, because you have
Mm,
leaders who never really cared about leading or fostering a positive work culture or developing their people. Instead, they were focused on them. They cared about themselves and their needs. And that's why so many people exit out of companies. And that's why you see, the term job hopper or toxic work environment. That's where that all comes from. It all starts and ends with leadership.
wow. I think you just dropped a major bomb in the way you said it. So for leaders who want to be leaders or people who want to be leaders for the wrong reasons tend to kind of create that toxic environment because they're leading for the wrong purpose.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, those people are not developing people.
Mm,
They don't care about building any type of relationship. They just want you to get stuff done. If you need them to speak up for you or advocate for you, they're not going to do that just in case it makes them look bad. So they're more focused on themselves, which is going to lead to an environment that you do not want to be part of.
awesome. Thanks for joining, Robert. That's my family. Robert Risby joined. He's been a great leader here. I was led by him years ago in my early sales career. So appreciate you joining, cuz um, that's I think that's so important. Would you say? I think I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it, and then give me your take.
Mhm.
I
All
think
right.
employees should ask their managers in their one-on-one, "Why did you become a manager?" and see what that
Absolutely.
response is.
Absolutely, you should do that. And what I will say is, for job seekers out there who are going to interviews, you also need to ask that in the interview. It's okay. They're interviewing you, but you need to interview them as well. You need to know who you will be working for, what their management style is. And I always sneak in a question like, oh, can you tell me something that your employees compliment you on? Or why do people like working for you? And if you get or if they get offended very easily, that's not your manager. That's not someone you want to work for.
Mhm. Do you have kind of a checklist or cheat sheet for employees to look at with, okay, I'm gonna go in and ask these questions, and if they check off three of these, not a good manager. If they check off three of these, oh, this is a phenomenal manager.
Oh,
If you could create
absolutely.
a
So,
go
yes,
ahead.
I actually share a lot right on my LinkedIn posts. If you go through some of my posts, I share a lot of the questions you should ask in interviews. I also built a program. It's actually a webinar that I had last year. It's called Breakthrough to Break Free. And it's all about escaping and avoiding toxic work environments. And in that session, I give a lot of good questions to ask in interviews to help you avoid some of those red flags and avoid potential managers that may be harmful for your mental health.
Ooh, are you gonna do it again this year?
I plan on it. Yes, I'll probably do it again in the summer, but for now people can grab that, recorded webinar, but I will be doing another live one
Awesome,
because it
awesome.
got great feedback and we had a lot of great conversations.
What share with us some of the feedback that came out of that from, and I'm sure it's probably from leaders. They were like, "Wow, I didn't know I had this blind spot." Like, "Oh my God, I'm that person." Um,
Yes.
if you
Yep.
can
So we
recall
actually
some of that stuff.
Yeah, we actually had a mix of attendees. Some were people who
Hmm.
were going into leadership roles, and then a lot were job seekers as well who had just left toxic work environments.
Mm,
And one of the biggest things they told me that they left empowered because they didn't know that they could ask some of those questions in interviews. because, the traditional advice is, oh, when you go into an interview, just ask them, when are you going to make a final decision? Or what trait do I need to succeed in these roles? And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, we're going to get rid of that. We need to get down to the root of what you want to know. And you want to know about leadership. You want to know about the culture there. And you want to know if you are going to be developed and coached and mentored as an employee.
Great. I think, yeah, that's just ringing in my head right now that employees should ask that or during the interview, right? If they get the opportunity to interview directly with the hiring manager that they'll potentially work for, what type of leadership should I expect from you by being a part of your team, right? What does that look
Absolutely.
like? And just let them unpack as much as possible. And I think a,
Mhm.
a tell a telltale sign is if they don't
Mhm.
unpack.
Yes. Red flag, major red flag. And I always tell people, listen to what they are saying to you. Like, actually listen to the answer, because
Hmm.
sometimes you can pick up red flags within the answer as well. So
Yep.
pay attention when they're talking to you. Ask them to give examples too, and avoid asking those yes and no questions
Right.
as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I would love if anyone's done that. Share your feedback in the chat. I would love to hear what kind of responses you've done that if you've received if you already done that throughout your career. Um, what are some red flags you personally saw in your journey when that we haven't covered with managers you worked for?
Oh gosh, I mean, I saw so many. I worked in a lot of toxic work environments because I used to ignore red flags, and I'm a natural optimist, so I would always give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, they were weird in the interview, but it's okay. They'll be better when I get there." It never was. So I'll give you an example of, some of the questions that I asked in interviews.
Hmm.
Number one, I asked about a manager's management style before. And they told me that no one's ever asked them that before and they've never really thought about it. Okay, so that's a red flag. I
Hmm.
also asked a manager, I actually went around the room. I said, can each of you tell me what your favorite part about working here is? And I'll never forget, one girl told me they had the best coffee ever. And I was like, wow, that's it? Okay, all right, gotcha.
Oh,
And then
hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry to jump in. That was a manager telling you that, or just an
Yes,
employee?
yes.
Oh, wow.
So it was an employee, and then the manager told me they co-signed and they said the coffee is really amazing here, but I really like that we get a good amount of time off. And I said, wow, that is something. I'd
Wow.
be so embarrassed if I said that as a manager, but I was like, okay, so you're not the person for me. I asked about their management philosophy, and
Hmm.
the person told me that they ran a really tight ship. Um, I can only guess what that means, but I
Right.
know that I don't want to be a part of that tight ship because that doesn't sound appealing at all. So I've heard a lot of interesting things, and I will say that I knew after the interview whether or not they would be a good manager, and often I could tell within my first week of working for them as well.
So, with your most recent career, what were some of the responses that led you to feel like, yep, I could absolutely partner with this manager, and I think we'll have a great relationship? What were their positive responses in those interviews?
Yes. So the older that I got, the more blunt I became
Mm,
because it's not fun. Job searching is not fun. It's not an exciting thing. Starting over at a new company, trying to make a name for yourself and figure it all out, like none of that is something that's exciting to dive into.
right.
So when I went to interviews, I said, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to say what I want and kind of go from there. Right. So my most recent career, I remember saying in my interview, I said, listen, I just want to tell you about my working style and then you tell me about yours. I do not need a babysitter. I'm an independent worker. I enjoy doing my own projects without someone looking over my shoulder. And if you are a micromanager, that is not going to work for me. I'll probably leave within the first 30 days. And I said that in the interview. And I just remember, like the manager I had, he was great. He said, oh, that's perfect because I don't want to babysit another person. And we laughed about it. And I worked for him, and he was wonderful. He was a great manager. So be
That's hilarious.
yourself in these interviews, say what you need to say, ask the questions you need to ask, and that's how you can find a good match. I
Yeah.
equate it to dating. Like, be yourself,
Yep.
forget that representative.
Yep. It is a marriage. I'm definitely on the same page because at this point as well, I'm quick to say, hey, at this point in my career, this is what I'm looking for to partner.
Yep.
Because I want the employer to know this is a partnership.
Yes.
It's not just hired help.
Mhm.
Because I can bring a lot to the table. So I'm more direct to is saying this is the type of management style I work with. I need
Mhm.
complete autonomy if it's a manager role. I was like, I need complete autonomy. And one of the things I say all the time is like, if I throw 10 things at the wall, 10 ideas at the wall, let's talk about the one that stuck, not the nine that failed, right?
Yes.
Because the building block to the nine that failed led us to the 10 that's the 10th one that stuck. So let's talk about that. Let's not hammer like, oh, this didn't work. No. How do we improve? How do we improve? Let's keep moving forward. So I love that. It's really knowing, and that's the self awareness piece you said.
Yes.
If you know where you're at, you need to go in and stake your claim. Like, hey, this is where I'm at for this to work, and think of it as a partnership, folks. I'm telling you, when you have that
Mhm.
mindset, it's a stronger stance, and I think you'll feel confident, more confident in the interview. But let me jump to I think real quick. Who was that? Scott. Scott said the manager at large in a large manufacturing plant once told me in an interview that he believed a smiling employee did not have enough work
Wow.
to do. Holy cow! Wow. Okay, that's terrible. That
Yeah,
is
it is.
terrible.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you see, that's what people actually deal with, and this is
Yeah,
more common than you think. I hear so many horror stories, but I'm always like, hey, I'm glad you saw that in the interview instead of waiting till you work there and realizing who you were working for.
yeah.
So,
I'm gonna mess up your name, Kalja. You've been
oh,
commenting
that's
all night, so
Kalia. Yes, that's my friend.
Kalia. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Kalia. She shares the same sentiment. That's horrible. She said, Scott, yeah, that's horrible. But that's terrible. Where, where, where should? What are some good resources other than obviously coming to you for coaching
Mhm.
um, that managers should be looking into to kind of really fine tune their management style and awareness?
Yes, I highly recommend finding a mentor
Mm,
and finding someone that you like their management style, you look up to them and you admire how they lead their teams. That's who you want to mentor you because they will give you that honest feedback and they will help develop you into the manager that you want to be. So I highly recommend finding a mentor, building relationships with other managers as well who can, kind of give you best practices and tips for managing a team. I recommend that. Always going to conferences, finding those professional
mm.
development opportunities. There's so many leadership seminars that you can be a part of. I mean, a quick Google search will give you a bunch. And then, of course, I always plug LinkedIn Learning because they have a whole library dedicated to leadership and management. So there's so many resources out there.
I think there's that. I think that can give you a lot of, and this is just my thought. You can learn the practical tips, right? The strategic tips, but still, when it comes to the human factor, I think that's an on the job training
Absolutely. A
because
lot of it is trial and error.
yeah, versus because you don't know the personality. Sometimes you inherit a team, right? Most often than not, you inherit the team as a new leader. Rarely do you get to build a new team, so it may be easier that way. But with that question, do you see much of a difference in inheriting a team or building a team? If you had the preference, what would you like?
Well, I will say this. It is powerful when you inherit a team that may be broken
Mm,
and you go in and you really make a difference and change the culture. That right there is rewarding. I've done that and it has been very fulfilling. And it also showed me that leadership matters and it makes a huge difference in the culture of an organization. Of course, it's wonderful to build your own team because then you're picking your own people. You might know them as well, so that makes it
hmm
easier. But I say you come out a better person whenever you inherit a team and get to know people and kind of shift things around.
Here's what I like about inheriting a team, especially if they're a little tenured. within the company. It's that institutional knowledge that they have.
Yes.
So I'm quick to humble myself and say, I'm going to lean on you and all of
Mhm.
you to get me up to speed. So please tell me if I'm going down a rabbit hole, the wrong hole, the dark hole, because there's that institutional knowledge that they bring to the table, which I
Yes.
absolutely love. I know I got a solid team who's really taken the time to understand the business, the
Mhm.
processes, the culture. I think those are phenomenal team members to inherit. And your approach is different. Your approach coming in is
Yes.
definitely different. It's from a servanthood standpoint, in my opinion, versus okay, I'm the new kid on the block. Let's see some reports. Let's change this. Let's change that. And I always include
Yes.
any changes I see or improvements that need to be made. I was like, hey, let's do this as a team. Give
Mhm.
me your advice first. What do you think we should improve on? This is that. Great. Now I'm seeing your thought process, and then I'm like, good. Let's execute on that. Let's put a date and time to push forward. So I personally prefer an inherited team. That's just my opinion. Um, that was my little rant there. So,
No,
but
it was really great, and I wanna add to that too. I think
yeah,
it's also important whenever you inherit a team, they're often on edge too because number 1, they don't know who you are, they don't know your
yeah,
background, they don't know what your ideas or goals are. So I think always going in and sharing your intentions with your
hmm,
team and being completely open, especially with that first group communication, I think that's
yeah.
essential.
Yeah, it's not. And my conversations are never formal in the beginning. They're quick to like, hey,
Mhm.
let's just talk. Forget the manager title. It's just let's just talk, It- and make me understand where I'm at within the team.
Yes.
Stuff that I may not know. What should I, who the main contacts that I should be aware of.
Mhm.
Just things that, again, that are hidden nuggets that they're able to share with you and be like, hey,
Mhm.
this is what it was before, and so forth and so on. I'm like, oh, got it. Now I know my approach.
Absolutely. And I want to add one more thing too,
Yeah,
because
go right
I've,
ahead.
I've coached a lot of professionals about this and I've experienced it myself. Whenever you inherit a team, there is usually one person in the team who went for that leadership position and didn't get it.
Mm,
So I always recommend make sure that you identify that person and build a relationship with them, an intentional one, and work to develop them so that you can understand their goals to help them get to the next level because you already know they want to be there. So be supportive of that person.
I love that because we're just piggybacking off. We ping
Yeah.
ponging here, and I love it. Um, if you come into, and I want to make this point because you just brought it up. If you're coming into an inherited team and the manager who brought you in or the senior person who brought you in did not make you aware that someone on that team went for that role that you are now managing, that is a big miss. Because you can step and that can come out and you may just rub the wrong way because they feel like they were overlooked or whatever. You need to unpack what was missed and anywhere you can help say, okay, well, let's get you to the next level, whatever that looked like. Individual contributor, like you said, you may not manage, you just maybe you just want more money. So let's see, either we may find you a new role that has more money where you don't have to manage or whatever that is. Because I love that you through your coaching program you can uncover like, hey, you're like, hey, Orlando, you looking at this completely wrong, man. You're like, hey, but this ain't it. This ain't it for you.
Yep.
Let's look at an IC role that can get you, or you may need to exit the company if they don't have what you're looking for. So, what are if you can build if you can build AI the perfect leader? No such thing. We all grow and learn. Um,
Mhm.
in today's climate, what would that look
Mhm.
like?
Wow, it would be a combination of character traits and the
Hmm.
desire to continuously improve. I think that is huge. I really like the individuals that I work with who are hungry to learn more and to constantly be better because there's so many people out there who feel like they've mastered who they are. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, there's still a lot of learning and growing to do. So that paired with character traits like courage, that's a big one
Mm.
because sometimes you're going to have to do things that you're not always comfortable with. So there needs to be some courage there. Um, Gosh, I would also say integrity. is a huge one as well. You need to be able to remain true to yourself and always do the right thing. That's something I strongly believe in. And empathy as well, because that's a huge part of building those relationships. You need to be able, to show that high level of emotional intelligence, because people can tell when you're faking it or when you're
Hmm.
real. So you never want to be that robotic person where people say, oh, my boss doesn't care about me or what's going on
Mm,
with me personally. So you need to have empathy as well,
I
along
love
with being self aware and selfless.
that. I love that because I think the empathy piece and is so subtle today in today's
Mhm,
corporate
mhm.
landscape, especially among senior leaders, that they can be empathetic enough to where, let me make sure I frame this correctly. If you're not aware as the employee, it's just enough to get you back on the hamster wheel,
Yes.
but it's not really, that much more than that. It's not enough to, it's like, hey, are you truly well and happy in what you're doing here?
Mhm.
Not to the point where, like, oh, I got to cut you loose. Like, hey, if you're not happy, there's the door.
Right.
Versus, can we find something in this organization that you will thrive, because we don't want to lose you.
Right.
So I think that empathy piece that you made, that point you made, is so crucial because it's subtle, covered with,
Mhm.
we care, but I
Yes.
care enough to get you back to work as quick as possible in the right
Right.
mindset. Like, hey, we're good, right? Okay, good, 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 good. I
Yeah.
was like, come on, did you really care about what that situation was or something? But I
Mhm.
love that. Uh, Dale, thank you for joining. No successful leader can lead without
Mhm.
E, empathy. I assume that E is for empathy. Or was
Oh,
that EI?
emotional intelligence. Yep.
Intelligence. Yes,
EI.
yes, yes.
Yes.
I thought that was an
Yep.
exclamation point. Thank you. Yep. Absolutely. Huge. Ooh,
Mhm.
EI is huge, huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Man, time is running by. So I want to make sure I go into, where can um where can folks consume your information, connect with you, and get your coaching?
Yes, right here on LinkedIn is where that's my primary place where I'm sharing a lot of tidbits of information. Um, my name is Chelsea J right on there. And also, I have a weekly blog too. And my blog talks all about the taboo topics in the workplace that a lot of people shy away from. So I put out a new article every single week. You can also go to my other company's website, seasonedandgrowing.com, and don't forget to check out my new LinkedIn learning course. It's the skills you need for your first 90 days as a manager, and that's in the featured section of my profile.
Ooh, love it. I'm gonna check that out tonight. Um, what are some? So you said some of the things in your blog. What are some of those topics we're not talking about?
Ooh, toxic workplaces.
Hmm.
What you do when you are turned down for a raise, or if you feel like your boss is harassing you, how to handle
Ooh.
that. Really approaching difficult conversations too. I talk about how leaders can dismantle toxic workplaces as well. So there's a little bit of everything. Everything that people have put in my inbox over the years, I answer it in my blog. And of course, those questions that you need to ask at the end of an interview.
I need 8 yeses real quick, because it sounds like Chelsea needs a part two to dive into that stuff. So, folks, put
Yeah.
yes, yes in the chat for me, and I will get Chelsea back on the podcast to share some of those additional nuggets. What is your? I like to ask this question. What is your daily kind of internal mantra that gets you going every day to do what you do?
Yeah, I just always want to be better every single day. I want to figure out a better way to do things, how I can be a better person. I'm always open to feedback. So just trying to be better every single day.
All the yeses are flooding in, Chelsea.
Oh, awesome.
Love it, love it, Julie. Thank you for joining. Awesome. So, I always say last question, and then I have another last question. Share
Mhm.
with the folks that are listening, who will watch the replay, and that are watching now. Um, what's next for you in this space of educating leaders?
Ooh, that is a good question. Really continuing to share my knowledge. One of the things that I also want to do is build another course with LinkedIn as well, kind of the next level of leadership. Like after your 90 days, let's talk about what the rest of that first year looks like for you to succeed. I really want to focus more on building relationships with employees too, giving you tips and best
Mm,
practices on how to do that as well. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I will be having another Breakthrough to Break Free webinar this year. Most likely it will be this summer, so that's on the board. And just working with companies to help them develop their leadership programs as well.
love it. Joe at the final hour with some advance notice on your next episode. So
Awesome.
we'll do, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Make sure you're following both of us. Hit the bell, the whole
Yes.
notifications as we post, flyers and events that are coming up for both of us. So appreciative of you coming on, Chelsea, in such short notice, and watching the podcast as you mentioned, and sharing your insight. Very key points that I think are valuable for today's climate in this career economy that I call it now. That leaders, we as leaders, some that are new leaders need to be aware of. So, highly recommend the blog. Connect with her. And really consume the information. The LinkedIn Learning as well. I'm definitely gonna watch that because I think that's super crucial. So, any last parting words? Anything?
I just want to thank you so much for inviting me to the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you to everyone in the chat that participated as well. Continue being fearless and reaching your goals. Yeah.
Love it. So, folks, appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions post broadcast, throw them in the chat. I will tag, or you can tag, or directly contact Chelsea. But I would love to see what those questions are, so I get educated as well. Right, we're on a constant learning path here. But hold on 1 second, Chelsea. I'm gonna close this out with a quick video, and we chat behind the scenes. We'll see
All
you
right.
next time, folks.
Thank you.